David Pere, welcome back, man.
Thanks, buddy. How are you doing?
Not bad, not bad. It's been dude, we interviewed, I think it's been a couple years at this point, but you were episode 23. You
Yeah.
were the first what double guest, second timer on the show. So congratulations. Super excited to
Perfect.
super excited to connect with you.
I guess I got lucky.
Well, I don't know about that. You got a big network out there, and Adit Shah hit me up. He's like, "Hey, you should have David on," and I'm like, "I've already had David on, but I'd love to connect with him again." So here's to Adit for connecting us once again.
I appreciate it. Indeed is the man.
He is. He is. Yeah, man. I know. At this point, I can't imagine there are many people in the military or thinking about joining or veterans that don't know who you are. But let's kind of hear a little bit of your story before we get too much into stuff.
Yeah, I mean, most of it's pretty simple. I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, wanted to join the military. Well, wanted to leave Arkansas. Military is a good way to do that. And so, it covers school and all that. And thought I'd have some adventures. So I did. It was a great time. I was in the Marine Corps for 13 years. And I guess the part people care about on this is about 7 years into that, I realized like I had nothing financially to show for it, which is fine. I lived the way most service members live, especially single guys, right? Harleys and guns and tattoos and women and alcohol and whatever else you can blow money on. And I was on recruiting duty and I was working a ton of hours and I realized that I was kind of stuck. There wasn't a way for me to leave without having to get another job or at that point it's like, well, why leave the military and get a W-2 if I'm like halfway to pension, So instead somebody handed me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. They were actually trying to get me into Amway. It didn't work and got me into Rich Dad Poor Dad. I listened to it as an audiobook and that kind of changed the trajectory of my life where it was like, oh, well, now I can afford to spend time on something that actually benefits my future instead of, drinking or Call of Duty or whatever other unproductive things I was doing in my free time, chasing cars, probably.
Yep, right on. That's so funny. I feel like somehow I don't know what the connection is to Robert Kiyosaki and the Amway network marketing stuff is, but that's the every time I've been pitched on Amway, they've come holding a Robert Kiyosaki book. I'm like, I haven't read a Robert Kiyosaki book that promotes Amway. I don't know what this is.
He actually has one or two.
Does he?
He has like a book or two on like multi-level marketing at this point, but that's usually not the one they bring. They bring Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I guess the idea is like if they can get someone interested in, passive income, which they can teach you how to earn, maybe, I don't know.
Got it.
Oh, and then I guess the rest of that story is I kept buying houses, and when I left the military, I didn't have to get a job again. So ta-da!
There you go. You're basically living every service member's dream is to be able to get out of the military, effectively retired without having to do the 20 years. So
in a way, yeah. I mean, I definitely still work on what I want to, but
sure,
it's what I want. So it's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to, kind of, we went more into depth on your story on episode 23. And when we were connected and I'm like, what are we going to do for a second episode? I'm like, dude, can we just do basically a coaching call? Because I know that my questions are not unique. And I know that my position is not unique of like, I've used the VA loan for the house hack. I'm in the house hack, got a bunch of equity, and I'm just like trying to figure out how to, how do you do the next one? And then the next one. But then, you just all like the following questions, like how do you scale this thing? And I think obviously, you're kind of in, a number of years ahead of me in your content, in your real estate, in your business. And so selfishly, I'd love to just be able to like kind of pick your brain and kind of see what you're thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
What you've done. So I know you, as am I, you're a big proponent of using the VA loan.
Yeah.
One, give us a kind of a high level on how to optimize the VA loan and what you recommend veterans do with a VA loan.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite strategy with it is house hacking, which is, most people know it as buying a duplex to a fourplex and you live in one unit, you rent the rest. There's a lot of other ways to do it. You can buy like a 5 bedroom single family house and rent out 4 of the bedrooms to like, the best example of this is like a young lieutenant or captain, young officer, and they rent out all the rooms to other single lieutenants or captains, and they crush it. One of my probably favorite house hack stories ever is my buddy Rio. That's what he did. He had a 5 bed, 4 bath house that we always jokingly called it the Playboy Mansion. It was, him and 4 other single Marine Corps officers, and they turned the 3 car garage into a really baller gym, and they had a room that they put a billiards table in, and then they like knocked the wall out, built like an in the wall bar, and it was that place like we'd go there for the Super Bowl or for a party, and me and my roommate would be like, all right, we have to set a curfew because if we don't leave at this time, we might as well just stay all night, and then our whole week's going to be off. And
Yeah.
because it was always way too much fun. And that dude cleared while he lived in it. He basically broke even, but the moment he moved out, I'd say he probably cash flowed a couple $100, but he also got to keep all of his BAH.
Hmm.
And now he moved out. He's clearing like he's like net like $1,500 a month. He doesn't live in the country right now. He's stationed abroad, and he's also got probably like $500,000 in equity because it's gone up. He bought it for like seven something. It's up to like 1.2, and he owes like six. It's a
So
killer deal.
California,
And
I assume.
yeah, California, right outside the back gate of Camp Pendleton in a beautiful gated neighborhood. And you could not ask for the better like example of how to do it in a house that you'd actually want to be your forever home.
Yeah.
But the fourplex is really the more common and easier model for most people, especially if you've got a wife or a wife and a kid. And the main premise though with house hacking is you buy a property where you may not, everyone always thinks you have to live for free. You may not live for free. You might live for free. You might even cash flow a little bit while you're living in it.
Yeah.
But I look at it as if you can buy a place where your tenants will get you to a point where you are at least holding back some of your what you would have spent on housing. So
Yeah.
if you're in California, you can assume on the lowest end you're spending 2 grand a month on a rental. So if you can save $1,000 a month and pocket the other thousand,
Yeah.
I call that a win. It's like, well, you own the place and you're saving $12,000 a year. Cool.
Totally.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I mean, no, I 100% agree. I think, yeah, obviously with a lot of the content out there, it's like, oh, house hack can live for free. So with with today's interest rates and today's prices, people like they see the numbers like, oh, I can't live for free. This is a bad deal. It's like, well, not really. I mean, maybe you pay $500 a month to live there instead of renting for 2,000. Like that's a pretty sweet deal.
yeah.
I'd be game for that. When we bought our duplex, we weren't living for free. And then, renovated, turned into an Airbnb, and now, we're cash flow after living for free. Like we're net positive. And so, be patient. Those opportunities are definitely out there, but it doesn't have to be an immediate live for free scenario. So yeah, totally agree with that strategy. I'm a big fan. It's been helpful for me. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, I want to, what is the next play? Ideally you get kind of like into an upsized, for me, I'm like, I'd rather get into an upsized house hack where like my living situation is better, but I still have somebody to offset the mortgage. Maybe like an in-law suite instead of a full-on duplex.
Yeah.
Or I've been shopping for self-storage. Does it make more sense to stay where I'm at and go straight into kind of a larger multifamily? Like I was just looking at an 11 unit mixed use today. They want like 1.5 for it. I'm like, I don't think it's worth quite that, but I'll go see it.
Yeah.
So like, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is like, what is, I get big picture. It's like partners and investors and like going in with other people. How do you tactfully, and tactically scale? Like what was your process in scaling?
I mean, probably the third deal I ever did happened to be a 10 unit. Honestly, I kind of got lucky on scaling. Like I was just wholesaling and I was looking for like a deal. I tried to do like 3 or 4 deals a month and I tried to hold one. And then I had a letter hit a guy who had a hotel and two apartments and the house, was like all or nothing. And basically, we negotiated some creative stuff, and I brought in two partners, and we all threw 100K down, and that was, money that had come from refinancing or selling properties earlier that year, and we took it down, and that was kind of, I won't say that's all she wrote, but like that was it. And so when I talk scaling, like for me, a lot of it has been more through the network than anything. It's
Mm.
been like where I shine, and I think that's the key is figuring out where you shine. Like if you're the operations guy,
Yep.
find somebody who can raise money and bring them good deals and be like, yo, I'll give you, perfect example. My buddy Marty brought me 13 single families and a vacant lot for, whatever purchase price in March-ish, March, April. And so I raised the money for the down payment and the renovation, and then I signed on the loan, and I got 35% of the deal, and he's found the deal and running all the operations and property management. And so, like, on my end, my connection is I can raise some capital. I have some people I know. I've got a lender in my pocket, and I'm bankable, whereas he's not. And I've got LLC creation and all those relationships. And on his end, he found a really good deal, and he's operating it, and he's got his own self-management, property management company. And so it's kind of like figuring out, I think for scaling, it really boils down to what you're good at. Like I'm good at the people, the capital, the creative financing side of stuff. I'm also good with negotiating the deal, but I don't want to look for deals anymore. And I don't want to operate deals. And I don't want to, manage deals. So it's like if I can find those partners. And so some of my deals lately this year, earlier this year, like we took down a 130 key hotel in Tennessee,
Mm.
and I did a lot of capital raising for that. But then I also helped them with like their social media, the investor relations, the Google business page, and like, cause that's my realm of expertise. So, there's a lot of different ways to scale, but it really just boils down to focusing more on what you excel at and letting the other stuff, either you outsource it or you partner with someone who can do it so that
Yeah.
you can do more without it being a drag.
Fair. So in my position, I'm up in New England, not a cheap market. Median home price
Yeah.
at this point is probably like 550 or more. Um, I mean, probably more than that. Yeah, probably like six almost.
Yeah.
Which that kind of transfers to every other piece of real estate in the area. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I work in commercial real estate. I have access to people that are maybe thinking about selling off their property. I'm always looking at the market, and so I feel like I have leads all the time. And oftentimes it's like, okay, well, how would I afford that? How would I, do I need somebody to come in for the down payment? Do I need somebody to come in for the renovation? And every time I'm like, underwriting these things and trying to run these numbers, I'm like, okay, this could make sense, but if I gotta include somebody, it's gotta be that much better of a deal for it to be worth both of us, worth it to both of us. And it's like, no, they're not gonna sell it for that cheap. Like how do you give them equity? Do you, just basically use them as a hard money loan for the difference? Anytime I just feel like anytime you're increasing your debt position, you need to it needs to be making that much more money because you have that bigger of a debt payment. Um, so do you change your expectations of like no cash flow from the beginning? I mean, how do you navigate that?
Well, for one thing, I'm in a cash flow market, so that makes it a little easier. Our stuff is very cheap, but it also does not go up in value a ton.
Yeah.
So there's that. I think it's one or the other, right? Like if you're going to do the private, you can do private money for shorter term stuff. Like you can either go the route of finding things that need to be repaired, right? Like they're not doing what they should be or whatever. And you bring in the private money for, say, the purchase and the rehab, and then you do a burr, you refi out into debt and you pay them out of that. That's how I've done quite a few of these properties where the numbers made sense, where I could purchase, renovate, and then refi and pay them plus interest out of the refi, and then I just own the home for nothing left in the home. I did that probably 13 times.
Mm.
The other side is, if you're raising for these deals, like we'll just do like, 2 years interest only on the debt as a debt lender, and then we'll pay them out of the refi when we either renovate the portfolio or sell the portfolio. Um, the other side, the equity position, that's a good one. If you can find somebody who's got capital and is willing to just sit it in a deal, that
Mhm.
can be a really good move, really good spot. But it's really just more. I think every deal plays out a little bit differently. But if you can afford to lend 10% on a down payment or whatever, and then use your capital for the upkeep, like cool. That's there's just in expensive markets, it does get a little trickier because you're right. Like you can't stomach losing money for so long, even if the deal's good.
Yeah.
But in that position, I lean towards the value add side of things if possible.
Okay. Do you have a, I mean, do you have a preference typically? Is your preference to give away equity? What is your preference for?
No,
No.
no, my preference is usually to find a property where I can, you know, either rehab it or sell it in a way that they get paid out of that, and I still, either still own the property with like totally out of there with them uninvolved, or um, you know, cash in my pocket. So like when we were doing the burrs, it was like if I could get like maintain the ownership of the property, pay them out plus interest, even if I didn't pull any money out of the refi, which I often did,
Hmm.
if I made $0 off it at that point, and even if it like didn't cash flow right away, it was just like barely break even. In my head, it was like, well,
Yeah.
I now own this house without a dollar into it. It's renovated. It'll pay for itself. I'm keeping it for the long term. And in the long term, I'm going to win. And I
Yeah.
just try to look at the long game on that. But I'm at a spot where I can afford to hold a house that pays me $5 a month, because
Sure.
it's not really performing a ton. And I'm just like, well, hey, look, the rents are lagging, but they'll catch up in 2 years and then I'll be okay,
Yeah.
which is the case on most of these. Or, yeah, well, in 6 months, I'll refi the portfolio and drop the interest rate, and then I'll save $3,000 a month or whatever. I think I'm paying like $3,800 a month in interest that I wasn't paying 2 years ago. So,
Dang.
things like that.
Fair. Okay.
Um,
So like I get hung up where um I'm conservative in my numbers and probably to a fault. Like maybe I'm throwing away deals that could work to somebody else, but because I'm like, that's just too thin, I don't go for it. And so it's like everybody wants to make as much money as possible on every deal, right? But if I get to it, I'm like, oh, like maybe there's only like, a 10% upside. I'm like, like, still pretty rookie in these like value adds. Maybe it'll only end up being 5%. And it's like, all that risk, all that everything for 5%, like, is that doesn't seem worth it kind of thing. Do you have a target for, what kind of percent you're trying to value add, or what is your goal when you're underwriting these things, and how do you fight? And maybe you don't have the tendency to be conservative in your underwriting, but how do you fight that tendency if you do?
I just go off numbers, like comps for single family stuff. It's easy with comps.
Yeah.
And we just try to buy it at, 70 or 75% of ARV minus repairs, minus what I expect to pay in interest or what I want to make in profit. And so for a, $100,000 house, that is often somewhere between 50 and 65K that we're offering. But they need work. So
Try
it
to buy it
does like
at 70% ARV, and then you minus the.
usually 75 and then minus.
Okay.
But also like, you know, that's yeah, so it's like 75% ARV minus repairs, essentially. And then if I was gonna like wholesale it, I would take whatever profit I wanted out of that as well.
Gotcha.
But those are like junk houses. If you're going to like a commercial guy, like a nicer, a property that's not falling apart, honestly, in your position where you're seeing these deals, it might make more sense for you to just offer or negotiate a seller carry for the down payment
Yeah.
and not even bring in an investor and be like, yo, I'll give you 5% interest on that last 100K if you hold it back while I buy this on a bank loan. And you won't have to pay capital gains tax on that 100K, and you'll make,
Mm.
you know, $800 a month or whatever it comes out to. Um, I would probably try to have those conversations and see if you can get into a deal for very little out of pocket through the seller and not have to bring anyone else in. Because if you could get a good seller financing note on it, you can roll that a lot easier than
Yeah.
the debt that you'd be paying to an investor. I love negotiating that stuff. But to your point, uh, my main goal with this is if I can hold the property without like, when I say if I can hold the property, I mean if it at least pays for itself, I'm good because like my
Mhm.
bet is long term on the market, I will win. And
Yeah.
I know that because I'm still in a market that's very low cost of living.
Mhm.
And so it's only gonna, people are gonna move here as things get worse in other cities. They already are.
Yeah.
Um, man, like falling apart. I need to pop some nicotine gum or cocaine or something.
All good. All good.
Getting old over here. But that would be my, if I can hold it long term, or if the renovation will support pulling my capital back out or the investor's capital back out, I'll
Yeah.
jump on it. I'm not necessarily looking for a big cash payout or a massive cash cow right off the bat because a lot of the properties I bought earlier are still chugging along and helping me out with that.
Sure.
And so I'm like, well, I don't necessarily need you know, now I say that there's always things that can go wrong, right? So when I say like it breaks even, I mean I'm budgeting, 7% for capex, 7% for maintenance, and 7% for property management and operations and what like that's all budgeted in. It's not like, oh yeah, it's not the break even cash
Yeah.
flow that
Yeah.
gurus say
Yeah.
where they're like, your mortgage is 2,000, it
Yeah.
rents for 2,000, breaks even. I'm
I
like, no,
know.
no,
I
no, no,
I
no.
always feel like I have to clarify when somebody says, "Oh, cash flow is this." I'm like, are we talking like pure cash flow or just like mortgage cash flow kind of thing?
Yeah.
It
I
drives
know
me.
when I go online and I'm like, I don't necessarily care if it cash flows that much because I
Yeah.
can hold it long term and it will. People gawk. And I'm like, well, okay, but my cash flow, when I say cash flow, that's after taking out, 28% in capex, maintenance, vacancy, whatever, plus property management, plus,
Mm.
my pity, plus my whatever. Like that's actual cash flow. That's not, that's like shoot, this is my cash flow, but if I just got my interest rate lowered, it'd be $400 more or whatever. Some of these property, like I laugh, I told you, like around $3,500 or so, $3,800 is what I'm paying right now in interest on my floating debt that I wasn't. And so I'm laughing because I'm like, well, dude, in a couple months when I refi that, like that's just more cash flow and it's just pure like it's whatever. Like it sucks right now, but it's okay. I had a few years where it was great. Like the reason I went on floating debt and I put ceilings on it. So mine's all capped at like 7.5, not, 9. Um, I went on the floating debt because my bank was lending me at 85% loan to value without seasoning periods. And so I would like, hey, Jason, I got this house. If you got 80 grand, I can buy it and renovate it and get you the money back in 6 months. And you'd be like, oh, sick. I'd be like, yeah, I'll pay you 10% 1 point. Great. Then I'd buy it, renovate it, and refi it. And it might be a 1 month turn, and I'd have the property back at,
Mm.
and they'd loan 85% on it. So say it appraised at you lent me 80, it appraised at just 100, usually like more like 140. But if it appraised at like 100, cool. I got 85 grand back. I hand you your 80 plus interest. So maybe 83. I pocket 2 grand. I got a house, and it basically sits even.
Yeah.
Um, Floating debt hurt a little bit, but that's just, that's why you have a buffer.
How many properties do you have right now?
Oh God.
Ballpark.
Let's
Like,
call it 25 single families, 3 duplexes. This thing, which is like a weird triplex kind of, it's not really, it's a single family with an in-law suite. And then I'm living in a tiny home I built out of a shed in the back, which is great. So it's a triplex with only one permitted unit.
nice.
And but it's whatever. I don't care. I'm like, dude, the downstairs is a 2-1 with a living room, a kitchen, a
Yeah.
laundry room, a bathroom. Like you can tell me it's not a duplex, but I could rent it for $1,000 down here. So, and
Yeah.
upstairs I was Airbnb for 4,500 a month until I shut it down last month.
Mhm.
Which I only shut down. I know everyone always asks, so just in case, I only shut it down because I got pissed at having guests. I was just they were annoying, and since I live here, I was like, I don't have to deal with these guys anymore. I don't need it. And I shut it down. And the only thing that I do with the upstairs right now is a cigar night and a cocktail night once a
Nice.
month. And so
Nice.
I'm like, whatever. But
Solid.
cost of being happy. So um
I ask you that because I mean, like, I dude, life just gets like freaking complicated. It gets
Yeah.
you guys, like you got so many different bank accounts, you got so many different lines of credit, you got so many. It's like how do you ensure, obviously ideally you create the systems prior to actually needing them, but like most people just don't do that. You build systems out of necessity, and if you don't have the scale yet, you don't have the need for those systems. So how proactive were you on building those systems as you scaled? And like, are you running around with your head cut off kind of thing, or are the systems in place and like everything's on auto payment? I mean, how do you navigate that?
Well, unfortunately, I had to let my assistant go 2 days ago, where I would say
Shoot.
she solves all my problems, but now I got to hire a new person to solve all my problems. There's a little bit of the chicken head cut off thing going on sometimes, but the reality for me is I outsource most of that. So I have a really
Yeah.
quality property manager, and in almost all of my partnerships, I've set it up in a way to where I just get a K1. I'm not the guy who's like, hey,
Hmm.
where's what's the payment? And my property manager pays all my bills. A lot of people, it's interesting because people let their property manager manage their properties, and then they still pay their mortgage, they still pay their homeowners insurance, they still pay their,
Mm.
utilities if it's vacant, they still pay, trash, like all that stuff out of their account. And for me, I asked her, I was like, hey, it seems to me like if I just gave you all of the bills and you put them on your report, that my, whatever it is, Buildium, yeah, Buildium report from you would look cleaner. B, it would cover everything, so it'd be actual net instead of like net minus all the crap Dave pays for. And
Yeah.
C, I could just hand that to my CPA without having to do a P&L or bookkeeping. And she was like, "Yeah, that's what I'm here for." I'm like, "Oh." So she pays everything. And, once every now and then I get a note from the bank that's like, hey, she was short like $100 on the mortgage because we changed whatever. And I'm like,
Mm.
okay, cool. Here's the money. Um, but I mean, yeah, yeah, it's great. She pays whatever. And then I'm pretty hands off, or I'm in partnerships where, speaking of, I need to annoy those guys about where my K1 is from them. But, or I'm in partnerships where it's like, yo, just send me what you need to send me. And then they just send me the financials and they handle everything.
How did you know? I mean, whether this be in real estate or in your, war room and content business, like, I have like, I have visions of like, oh, like ideally this is how this goes. And it's like, I have it while I'm like working on something else. And I'm like, okay, I can't stop what I'm doing and like create this. Uh, so like, how did you go about creating systems? Did you hire a coach? I mean, are you just like reading books and like taking notes and cat scratching it all together? Or how did you find, like, what's the most efficient way you found to put things in place?
Yeah, depending on which part of my ventures you're talking about, it's been a little bit of all of those.
Okay.
I've got, performance coaching, I've got masterminds, I've got people, I've got whatever. It has, I just got referred to this book. I haven't read it yet. So I'm not saying this book will answer your problems because I haven't
Sure.
read it. But it's called, I think it was called Effectiveness. I can confirm that. But the guy who wrote the book Essentialism or Essentialist,
Yeah.
like where it's like, do the bare minimum or whatever, also wrote this book, and I think it's called Effectiveness. And the whole book, I bought it because a friend of mine pitched me on it, is basically about the idea of, if I can spend 30 minutes doing something right now that saves me 5 minutes a day for like every month for the next, however,
Sure.
like for example, a template. Like if I'm going to write out a template, if I get a question frequently, I will spend the extra time to make that answer way better than normal. Then I will copy it and save it as a template somewhere. And so then the next 10 times I get that question, I just copy paste. It saves me, responding in any email. So like over time, I'm like, any task I repeat, I either try to automate or systemize. So like, can I make a template of this? Can I create a Zapier integration or something where this will automate? Can I, like for prime example today. So my assistant who, like I said, I had to let her go and she was really good at a lot of this stuff. Unfortunately, I had to let her go for something not related to her quality of work, which is unfortunate because her quality of work was amazing. But um it, something that couldn't, I
Sure.
guess I should just, there was money being borrowed that probably shouldn't have been being borrowed. So just an unfortunate situation all around because she was amazing. But we'll say for the last like 3 weeks, we have this new virtual assistant, and every Friday she would take the timesheet and she would go log into wise.com. And when she does, it would ping me and I'd have to give her the code. And then she'd go set up the payment and send the payment, and it would ping me again. And I'd have to give her the code. And then, she'd make the payments. Cool. It wasn't a big deal. I'm like, here, just yell at me when you need the codes. Here you go. Here you go. Um, but then I take over because I'm like, oh, I got to fix this. And I go and I looked at the last 3 or 4 payments, the first 3 or 4 payments of this girl. And I'm like, well, we had one for 363, one for 364, and one for 364.20. So I texted her. I was like, hey, are you cool if I just pay you 365 flat and we just don't do the hourly anymore? It's just a salary and I'll give you the rounded up a little bit so that I'm not shortchanging you. She's like, yeah, absolutely. I was like, cool. 365 a month or 365 a week, every week on Friday, ongoing, starting now, boom. And now I will never have to log in again unless there's an issue. So like little things like that. It's like it took me an extra, 10 minutes waiting on her to reply, do the
Yeah.
math, make sure I was getting the numbers right. And now I don't have to do that again. And so like I just try to do that as much as possible. And it adds up really quickly. And then it's just figuring out what, where your weaknesses are and outsourcing those. And that comes with growing. Like you can't just pull the trigger on buying, buying someone, paying somebody when you can't afford it, but most people can afford it a lot sooner than they think. And so like even just a part-time virtual assistant in the Philippines who can handle all the admin stuff if that's what you hate
Mhm.
can free up that much more time for you to focus on things that generate revenue.
Yeah.
For me, my revenue is generated within the mastermind community, the online brand, marketing, raising capital for deal, all of those types of things. And so I'm like, get rid of the admin stuff as fast as possible. I've got a video editor now, I've got a copywriter, these are all either part-time or virtual. Like most of these people are less than $1,500 a month. So copywriter, video editor, community manager. I'm hiring a CFO role. There's something else in there too, but it's just like
Yeah.
as problems and pain points arise, I either do them or
Yeah.
I find someone else to do them.
So
And
this is, I mean, all right. So this is like probably I'm like cheap to a fault. I
okay.
think I'm prudent, frugal, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, we'll say to a fault because I'm gonna probably give you the same feedback I gave my buddy, but let's go.
All right, cool. So and like, everybody's all like, oh, like abundance mindset, all this crap. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Like I'm all about like having a abundance mindset and like believing in yourself. But like you can only have an abundance mindset so much before you've spent all your money and you're broke, because
Yeah.
like at some point you're spending it all because you thought everything's in abundance.
Where do
And
you make the majority of your money?
I'm a self-employed, well, I'm a small business owner. We got a couple of employees, a commercial real estate appraiser.
Okay. And is it doing the appraisals that brings
That
in the majority of your revenue, or what part of that business?
Yeah, the valuation component. That's that, and yeah, we've narrowed it down where it's like that's what I should be doing, 100%. Like if I could do
Yeah.
that only all day long, um, then we would be, you know, increasing, maxing out our effectiveness.
So then if you were to sit down and you were to take, let's call it 1 week, and every day, every 15 or 30 minutes, you just write down what you're doing at that exact moment.
Hmm.
You went through and you put a dollar amount next to every task you did. And I mean, and you include like, I was on TikTok for 20 minutes on the shitter, like
Yeah, yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
right? You go through at the end of the week and you just run through it and you say, hey, when I'm evaluating when I'm like physically at a property and I'm running a valuation, let's call it that task is worth, I don't have any idea, like $50 an hour. I'm sure it's actually a lot more than that, especially because you're a commercial appraiser. So you appraise things that are much more expensive to appraise than, a crap single family house. But let's call it $50 an hour. And you're like, cool. Anything that makes me less than half of that, I'm going to find someone to do.
Mhm.
And so, that's all your admin stuff, or that's your marketing, your Facebook, your Instagram, your whatever. If you can figure out how to get rid of the stuff that you either hate doing or you're not good at that doesn't pay you that dollar amount, it's not that it's not an abundant thing. It's like that frees you, let's say it saves you 10 hours a week, and that 10 hours a week you turn into 10 hours of actually being at an appraisal. Well, cool. There's $500 a week. Now, if you find someone on, virtual for $300 a week, you just made, it's not an expense. It literally made you $200 to bring somebody in to take care of the stuff you hate doing anyway. So it's all an equation. And it just kind of comes down to like, you should spend as much time as you can in the area that you're good at,
Yeah.
you like doing, and makes you the most money. And like you find that trifecta and you're like, that's me. Everything else I want to get rid. And I think like the biggest indicator for this for most people is whatever task it is that you're procrastinating
Mhm.
is usually the thing you need to get rid of.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, so in my, day job kind of scenario, I totally agree. And ideally that's what we do. And oftentimes like seasonally dependent, I think we're pretty good on that.
Yeah.
Um, but there's the constant like the seasonal ebb and flow, and then like the micro ebb and flows within those seasons of like, like we just went through a crazy busy time, and that would have been realistic. Okay, like maybe hire another person and I could only be doing the key components. But now we're on a slower time. And then it's like, well, now like they'd be twiddling their thumbs and I'd be semi twiddling my thumbs. So it's kind of like, do you just accept those ebb and flows and you hire somebody and you just kind of try to grow into it? I mean, I if it's not 100% of the time that you can be maximizing that efficiency, then how do you decide when it's appropriate to make that investment?
I guess you bring them in part time and you turn it up as you need. So you can go find someone for 10 hours a week and go from there. Most people don't need a full 40-hour a week person when they first start.
True.
Uh, I mean, I have probably half my team doesn't, well, not anymore, but for a while I'd say half my team wasn't 40 hours a week. They were like 10 to 20. My COO is only 20 right now. And, so I would just say, you just kind of play with it. It's more about like getting that person in the seat, at
Hmm.
least for a little bit, and getting used to it and start using it. Because at that point, like the odds are that you will be able to realize very quickly, like, oh, I do have more stuff, or wow, this actually worked. Like I'm happier and I'm making more money. Like the funny thing, like it's interesting because yeah, you think of it, I guess you got to kind of think of it like flow state, where it's
Yeah.
like, when you get into flow, like let's say you're playing pool or whatever, you get into flow and like all of a sudden it's easy. Like you're not thinking about the shots, they just drop,
Yeah.
whatever. Like business is supposed to be fun and flow. Like if you're doing business right, it's not you working your ass off every day. It's like you being able to leave for 3 days and their phone doesn't blow up.
Yeah. Totally.
That's yeah. And it's not easy, but like shit, I'm still in the like I spent 3.5 hours today fighting a new mattress into my house and all the components all over the place and sweating my junk off and
Uh,
because I was missing a piece and it was a whole thing. But I didn't have to, nothing blew up in the office, but like I beat myself up because I'm like, I could have been doing this during that time, but like the business was fine.
yeah.
Like hardest part is usually just you.
Yeah. Fair. Fair. Yeah. I try to figure it out with with the content side a bit, because that's where I know, like, one, I know there are a lot of areas of it like I kind of don't like at all. Um, like editing videos, massive time suck. I don't like it. And so I hired a guy in the Philippines. I'm like, hey, if I just give you like a flat rate every month to hopefully like push me to be like create more videos and send to him, because I was dragging my feet too often. this has provided mixed results. I was hoping it would kick me in the butt a little bit more, but maybe I need to pay him more, I guess.
What do you pay this guy?
It's cheap, $100 a month,
Oh shit. Yeah, that's
super
okay. Never
cheap.
mind.
Which is maybe it would probably like why I'm like I should pay him more, even though like I found him on Upwork, and he's responsive and he's I'm like, hey, let's grow together. I can't expect Alex Hormozy editing, for $100 a month, even like $500 a month. That's some serious cash there. Um, but I've never been that fancy with my edits, anyways. It's more been about the information, and so where was I going with that? Yeah, trying to like one force myself to actually produce more content, to have an editor, um, and trying to figure out like, okay, how do I create more of a system with the content, but I don't make like I only am monetized on YouTube ads. I haven't done anything else to monetize. It's always been kind of a um hobby, I guess. And like I just, I was like, oh, like I'll just get subscribers, keep putting and building that goodwill, and eventually like I'll have an idea of like what's the product, what's my goal here. Because it started off as like I just want to like actually help people and share what I've learned. And then it gets to a point where I'm like, this is a freaking chore. I don't have that much time for it. And it makes me like $0,
Yeah.
Not, it's like, it varies, but it's not worth the time at what YouTube AdSense pays. So kind of curious what if you found yourself in that position, and what you would recommend.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely ad revenue wise, it's not worth it. But from a revenue perspective outside of ads, it drives my whole business. And whether that's people to raise money from, or that's people who buy into my mastermind, or that's people who need an introduction to a real estate agent, and I make a referral and get a commission check out of it, like a 25% cut. Not of the deal, but of the
Yeah.
agent's commission. Just otherwise someone's gonna be like, you get 25% for
I didn't know it was that high. It's 25% of their cut. No
That's
kidding.
actually that's actually the low end. You can most like industry standards between 25 and 35%, and I just do flat 25. Even if like a lot of times the agents will be like, we'll do 35. I'm like, look, if you want to give me 35, that's fine, but like I'm not asking for it. I want you to be happy too.
Huh.
And some of them do, which I'm like, cool, thanks. Like that's their
Yeah.
standard, but uh no thanks. Like I just do blanket. I'm not greedy. But like I make money from all of that. So I think if you're gonna do it, you need to figure out like what the end goal is, like if it's finding investors, or you know who you're trying to reach. But for my systems, I mean, a lot of my systems was an assistant, but I have uh like a task tracker within Slack that we use for videos where they are in the pipeline, and I use call it Frameo, like frame.io, as my like video editing. It's
Hmm.
not a video editing hub. It is like a Google Drive that I upload stuff to. And so let's say I upload a video, I can then watch it through and make comments. Like 3 minutes in, I can be like, put a stop sign here, like drop a this, make this caption, do this. And so I handle all of my editor. My editor does whatever he does. We sit down once a week for 45 minutes. We just go through whatever he's done, and any question mark he has, he put a comment. I go in, I answer the comment or delete it. Like, um, and so we'll take it from that platform. We just drop the link into our like Slack channel. My copywriter opens the video, makes a caption for it, and then used to be my assistant, but it will be me, I guess, for the next little bit. We'll just take that, and we use, it's called Metricool, Metricool, and that will cross post to every platform. And so, she can just go in there and upload, and poof, and it'll hit Insta, YouTube. Actually, I manually upload my long form YouTube, but she'll do the shorts that way. So it'll do, Insta, Shorts, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, all in one swoop.
So you give them access to all your platforms.
Yeah, I use it's called Dashlane, and so it's just a password protector, and I can share like, hey Jason, here's, and it won't tell you the password. It will just, if I give you access to it and you log in with your credentials to Dashlane, when you pop it up on your dashboard, it'll auto populate for you and log you in.
See, this is the kind of stuff that I'm like, oh, like sounds dope, sounds dope. Let me use that. Let me use that. And then before you know, it's like, gosh, I don't want to spend $1,000 a month on all these different services, you know? And
Yeah,
that's where I
some
get
of it
cheap.
adds up for sure.
Yeah. So I know that they're all useful. Like I was using Opus Clips. I'm like, holy crap, dude, this thing is like insane compared to what I was doing. Um, and is it perfect? No, but it's about quantity, most of the time,
Yeah,
especially for the shorts. So yeah, I know that they all are valuable. And it's more like really what it comes down to is I need to focus on like, okay, how am I gonna like what are my revenue sources? Because I got to do that in order to um pay for the all these services that I'm going to use for content. But yeah, and with that said, I'm curious. I know you recently did a rebranding of the War Room, and when I started this, I was like, I thought I was going to spend another 10 years in the military. I was like, I might as well make a career out of it, and so this was going to be kind of synonymous with my life. Now it's not, and I'm like, gosh, do I still like? I don't really want to be like that, like vet bro on YouTube. Not necessarily that I'm not saying you're a vet bro, but there's a
I
lot
get it.
of vet bros out there just like making vet content. I'm like, gosh, I don't want to be that guy. So just trying to figure out like what, I don't know. I don't even know what my long-term goal is and plan is with the content. I just kind of like Alex Hermosi talks about, like just keep depositing into the ether, build up goodwill, and then like figure it out later. Um,
Yep.
so I guess I don't know, like what you're it's kind of similar niche. I mean, you're veteran military, real estate. You're just gonna do you plan to stay that way? Like, have you thought about like is that something that you kind of think about too as far as pivoting?
No,
Um,
if anything, I'll open it up to just, and I kind of have slowly kind of opened it up, but just to military like investing. Like I just want to help vets achieve financial freedom.
yeah,
I don't care what route that is. I can talk at least somewhat articulately about every aspect of finances for the most part. And I just want to help vets avoid, stupid mistakes. Like I'm just going to name drop, like getting sold a whole life insurance policy by First Command that you don't need.
yeah,
I want to help, and I say that, and before you guys sue me, there's a whole bunch of other companies that suck too, and I'm just not a whole life fan, so whatever.
yeah,
Do your own research. I'm not an advisor. Just don't buy that shit. So, it's I'll probably I that's why I did the rebrand, like
mm,
because it was all real estate focused, and I was like, no, it needs to be all military focused. It's military investing, military financial freedom. Yes, there's a ton of real estate in my world, but I also have an IRA, index fund, TSP. I also would like to buy a business. I also, whatever. I've done some investing in non-public companies. I've there's all sorts of avenues to this. I'm building a business, I guess. So if I haven't bought one, I'm building one, right?
yeah.
Whatever. Um, and I think that there's a lot of ways to skin that cat. It's just more about, helping vets achieve financial freedom. And so I've kind of broken out to that, but I don't think I'll go outside of that niche, like as far as military, whatever,
Gotcha,
lifestyle stuff.
gotcha. Do you enjoy making content?
I do, yeah, to an extent. I mean, I enjoy, my ego likes being on camera, I guess, but I'm good on camera. I'm a good communicator. I don't dislike the filming process. I
Mm,
don't necessarily like the scripting or the ideation or the captions or the
yeah,
editing or any of that crap anymore, which is why I outsourced it all. Like my perfect world is that I get to a spot where my video guy shows up with like a bunch of great ideas. I have a bunch of great ideas. We spend a day. He films everything, my ideas, his ideas, whatever. I'm just boom, 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 boom. And then like that's it. Next thing I know, the content's getting uploaded.
so you've got you do you have somebody that like does the research for you? Like if you're making
Not
a
yet.
video, not yet. Okay. So like if you because right now like I come up with a thought. I'm like, all right, I've got a video idea that I want to talk about. Like make sure you do these things with your VA compensation money kind of thing. And I'm like, ah, gosh, like I gotta make sure I research this. I gotta like, there's a lot of legwork to like make that idea come into like an actual video, and like it's hard. You can't really hire a VA in the Philippines to understand the nuances of what's going on in your mind and how it like interacts with the VA and all this stuff. And it's like, is that even is it unrealistic? Am I thinking too small? Like, how do you get somebody? Because that's a big pain point for me is like scripting the videos that I want to put together.
Well, I'll tell you a couple things. One, I use Google Keep for a lot of this, and so Google Keep is just like checklist or
Yeah.
whatever board, and so I just have a section in there called videos, and anytime I have an idea, I just throw my title idea or something that'll remind me, and then some bullet points or whatever. And it really one of two things for the research. One, if it's a topic I understand well, I will just bullet point because I'm a good bullshitter. Like I'm good off the cusp. And so if I understand the topic, I don't want it scripted. I used to do like full transcripts, like I would write a blog post and I'd really research and deep dive, and the blog posts were great, the information was great. But even on the teleprompter, when I'm reading, like it just wasn't the same
Yeah.
vibe as if I had just bullet pointed it and riffed. And
Yeah.
it wasn't my personality. I was good on the teleprompter. Most people couldn't tell I was on the teleprompter, but I could tell my energy was down.
Mhm.
And, that kills videos. Like you got to be hyped, right?
Oh,
And so I would just say if you understand the topic, just bullet point it and just go. Like just one cut, let your editor or, whatever AI like cut out all the spaces. If you get to a spot where you're like, I screwed that up, just pause for like 10 seconds and then like
yeah.
clap so they know where to go and cut back in and just go as close to one take as you can. And on the research side, if like you really want to like deep dive or you don't know the subject or a portion of it as well as you want, dude, chat GPT.
Yeah.
Like, I won't say you should script it with ChatGPT and read what ChatGPT says because it's not going to sound like you. It's going to sound like
Sure.
a robot.
Yeah.
But I'm damn sure that thing can research, like, hey, what would be the most effective way to convey, the top 5 benefits of whole life insurance on a YouTube video?
Mhm.
Cool. Like, let me take that and put it in my own words and now bullet point it.
Yeah. It's funny. There's been a couple times that I've made videos. I'm like, dude, I know everything I want to say. And so I don't even write it down. I just like hit record and send it. But like I don't stop talking. And like I'm just like straight line, like say it all in one breath. And I'm like, that's gonna be miserable to edit and it's not gonna sound good on the camera because I just like freaking went off, you know?
You
uh
never know. I mean, that's authentic.
yeah, I guess that's true. Well, I mean, yeah, it's one of my earliest videos, like the GI Bill, and that's like I got like 200,000 views. That's like my number one video. So there's something to be said for that, I guess.
Yeah. People want authentic.
Yeah, fair. That's fair. Right on. Awesome.
I'd rather listen to you like just straight shot talk about something off the cusp than listen to you like perfectly articulate something that was scripted and you're like, on the 23rd of November
Uh,
2017, the VA loan was like, no.
yeah.
Yeah, just tell me. Like, dude, you know what the Earl is? The Earl's this crazy shit where you can do this.
Uh,
Like, I would listen to that all day over like, the VA Earl, also known as which is like what unfortunately happens when people script stuff out, is it becomes
true.
like it's just not the same.
No personality. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Your person, even if you're, and take it, I am a long winded, fast talking son of a gun.
Mhm.
I ramble, I rabbit trail, yeah. I got videos before I had an editor where I'm like picking my boogers on screen, like whatever, man.
Yeah.
And like people just, it's real. And those videos, like the authentic, like just less scripting, go, go, go videos outperform generally,
True.
the stuff I put a ton of work into, which is funny.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, riffing is great until you say something that you shouldn't have said, and then somebody wants to sue you for it.
Eh,
Nuts.
yeah, but I mean, you can always cut that out. Another thing you could do is you could go find videos in like, if you know your like top 3 or 5 competitors on YouTube or whatever, go find like their most popular 10 videos, pick 2 or 3 that you're like, I could talk about that all day. And then run the video through like ChatGPT or whatever and summarize it. Just take their bullet points. Just look at their bullet points so you're like in the same order and then just go. Like your own topic, you know?
Yeah.
You're kind of redoing their video, but not really. Like if I make a video about like top 7 MOSs in the military, and you're like, I could talk about MOSs in the military. I've got my own opinions. And you print it out, you've got my 7, and you're like, you could even make the video where you're like, this Dave guy said this, but I think that's bullshit. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know, man. Yeah.
It's so funny. This is one of the things that I should love about content, but I kind of hate it, is that like once you realize that the people on the internet that are making content literally just say the same thing over and over again 100 different ways. Like I love Brian. I like Brian Lubin. He's a solid dude. I think he's obviously crushing it.
Yeah.
Uh, but like all his shorts and stuff that he make, like he's just like saying the same thing with a little bit different intro. What do you call it?
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
else.
He always gives the, if you're new here, I'm Brian, and
Yeah.
what is it? And
Yeah.
I help you quit your corporate job in order to travel the world like I do. I don't
Yeah.
know. That's not exactly Brian. Yeah, I love Brian. I'm going to Banff with him in December.
Nice. Nice.
No.
But yeah, I just like I haven't fully committed to being that guy of like, do I just chirp the same song of House Hack, GI Bill, VRNE, like the same 10 points? And I guess like maybe if I knew like what I was trying to send people to, but I don't
Yeah.
have a course, I don't have a community. So it's kind of like I'm just making the content to hopefully educate the people, not really funnel them into my product.
Where do you have the most people in your audience? Like, is YouTube your biggest platform, or where's your
Yeah, YouTube. I should be on all these other things. I'm not. Like I
drop
just
a poll in the community on YouTube and just ask, like, what kind of content do you guys want more?
mm,
See what they say. And I would say, if you're not doing this already, please, for your dear Lord, just find a way to capture their emails.
mm, yeah.
Like, even if you don't do anything with it, like, that's every guy who's blown up that I've ever met. They're like, number one regret with content was not having an email list sooner. Like, well, I didn't have a lead magnet. Okay. Like, you can just put it in your email in all of your videos. Like, hey, subscribe if you'd like to see some deals we're working on, or subscribe if you'd like, updates, whatever. Like, people will do it,
Uh,
but it works better with a lead magnet for sure. But like,
yeah.
the email list is the most powerful piece of all the community stuff.
I know. And I was kind of getting on that train for a little bit. I'm like, oh, I should put like a newsletter together. I'm like, bro, I can barely upload like, twice a
Yeah.
month kind of thing.
I mean, but realistically, you could spend 30 minutes plugging information into ChatGPT. And I say ChatGPT because it's the one that everyone knows. There's a lot of AI stuff out there, but ChatGPT is good where if you pay the $20 and you got the ChatGPT 4, you go in there and you're like, hey, I have this brand. I'd like to focus more on YouTube and, emails.
Yeah.
What information would you like to know about me and my brand that can best help you, you know, facilitate, like, whatever. There's like prompts you could go online and ask, but like basically just go to ChatGPT and type in like, what do you want to know about me to talk about me better? And it'll ask you like 20 questions and you just write them all out and hit reply. Anything else? Cool. Write them all out. Like I did that. I
It builds
played
a
that game for like
portfolio
30
for you,
minutes.
basically.
Huh?
It builds a portfolio, like a
Yeah.
foundation that
At,
everything.
at this point, like I went to ChatGPT and I was like, hey, like last week, I was like, hey, write me 5 emails to push members of my community towards a free webinar I'm hosting on Tuesday about this. And I did not change more than like 5% of anything those emails had in them, which is really just like the call to action. And then I sent all 5 out or scheduled. So far, only one of them has gone out, and I've already got 65 people registered for the webinar. So I'm like,
I got that email.
cool. We'll see how well it changes. So yeah, so you'll get probably 4 or 5 emails this week. And every single one of them was not written by me. It was a single ChatGPT prompt. There's a Facebook post, there's a LinkedIn post, there's an Instagram story post, all just,
And
and
you send
so
it to your team and they disperse it.
well, because I had to let my main email person go, I just upload them manually. But I mean, it was literally copy, paste, schedule for this day, go. It was like, I think I got all of them uploaded and them written by ChatGPT in like maybe 35 minutes.
Gotcha. Interesting.
And if that 35 minutes brings me 250 people on a webinar, then that 35 minutes plus the 2 hours on the webinar, so we'll call it 3 hours total, probably make me 20 grand.
Nice.
I'm not
Yes,
saying that's going to be the same for everybody, but like,
totally.
it's just whatever, man. The emails are, you don't have to. You could just go in there and say, write me a 1 year plan. I want to send 2 emails a month, and ChatGPT could be like, here's the subjects. Cool. Write the emails, and it'll
Yeah.
write them all out. And then you could just upload one at a time, and you could spend 5 hours one day, upload an entire year's worth of scheduled emails, and then they would just send. And I would say you just build a like start an email list and then build like a welcome sequence of like 5 or 10 emails that go out to introduce you and what you do. And then anytime someone joins, they'll just get that over the first month. And then
Um,
if you send 1 or 2 emails here and there, like you'll catch them.
mm, okay. So, okay, I gotta find out what my angle is.
Yeah, you need to, that's what you got to do. You got to figure out the goal.
And then I gotta figure out how to make my life like more synonymous. Like my got my day job, and then I got this content stuff that I started, but there's no like overlap. It would be nice if there was some overlap. And I'm not necessarily trying to make a military millionaire 2.0 where it's like real estate, or rather, yeah,
You'd
real
be
estate.
surprised. There's 2 or 3 others that are
I guess that's true. Yeah. I guess
they're all trying to copy me. It's kind of
yeah.
I guess it's flattering. I don't know.
Well, that's what they say. Hey, find out what the successful people are doing, just copy them. You know?
Yeah. Lucky for me, they don't seem to have the anyway, we're not gonna
Yeah. No,
we
all
won't
good.
bash.
All good. All right. I should have asked this one earlier while we're on real estate topic, but we'll wrap this up. We actually spoke when I was, I was in the war room and I was asking about, hey, I've got this self-storage deal and it's got these nuances. How do I deal with this? And so I was under contract for a self-storage facility, fell through because there was a stormwater permit that was like built improperly, total disaster. So the bank said, "Sorry, bro, we're not lending on this." And at the time, the
Yeah.
guy's like, "Hey, we're
We
under
were this conversation was, I think, if I remember correctly, this was like I was walking up a hill in Austin sweating my balls up on a Zoom call, I
that." Yeah,
think.
yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds familiar.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. This was one of the office hours calls.
yeah, it was. Yep, yeah, that's it. That's it.
Okay.
Um, and so I was like, "Crap." All right, and the seller at the time was like, "I can't sell our finance." So it kind of died, right? And this was a
Okay.
couple years ago. And I hit him up, I don't know, semi recently, um, and asked like, "Hey, like, any change of heart on the seller financing?" His son was kind of involved, and maybe he's going to take it over, and so on and so forth. And he's like, "Son's out. Yeah, I'd be willing to seller finance." I'm like, "All right, cool. Let me get something back to you." And it's been 2 years, so interest rates. So there's been two dynamics that have totally changed the deal. One, interest rates are now 6.5% instead of the 4% that I was underwriting it at before.
Yeah.
Two, the supply has been dramatically impacted. I mean, people have developed storage like crazy in the last few years. So between supply increasing, obviously the COVID movement, momentum, and demand for storage has decreased. So we got higher interest rates, we got higher supply, and a slightly diminished demand. Still plenty of demand, but diminished. And so like I'm rerunning these numbers and trying to figure out like, okay, like I don't think I can offer him what I was offering him before, and I definitely can't. And I'm like coming in like 100K less, and I'm like, dude, there's just no way. I've been like totally sitting on my hands on the call because I'm like, I don't want to call him and offer him 100K less than we were under contract for 2 years ago, because that
What was the purchase price on that one? Remind me.
we were at 470.
Okay, so three. Yeah, so that's a significant.
Yeah,
But I mean, you could always just see if he's willing to carry more or carry the whole thing and do it at an interest rate that makes sense for you.
he is willing to carry the whole thing. That's the only way. Well, like whatever
Yeah,
down.
I mean, I would. My gut on stuff like that is like I would come up with like three purchasing options. One would be
I,
where you're at right now, like straight up three. Like this is what the market's at. Tell them exactly what you just told me. Like I'd have to be at this price. And then
yeah.
the other, like you come in, you're like, hey, originally when we talked, it was 470. Like I can do that if you're willing to carry. But you have to be willing to carry at like 4% interest, 100%, or whatever. And then the third, you could be like, I don't know. I often like to throw just like a low ball and be
Mhm.
like, 285, but it's got to be cash. Like that's the only way I can do cash. So like it's super low cash, like Anchor, and then the one that you think is the one that's like legit, the 100K less, and then the like full price, but on like incredible terms, like 40-year amortization, no balloon, 4% interest, whatever. Whatever that number has to be for it to work. And then either he takes the full price on incredible terms and you win long term, or he takes the offer you wanted, or by some, maybe he takes the freaking $90,000 off cash offer.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, shit, now what do I do? And then you call me and I help you figure out how to raise 300K for a deal that's going to crush it.
That's so funny. No, you recommended something similar last time. You said one's price, one's terms, one's
Yep.
a cash low ball. And so I was like, all right,
The Anchor.
solid.
They almost never bite the Anchor, but it makes the other offers look better.
Yeah. Well, his response was like he laughed because I had like a 50-year am on there for one of them. And then he saw the cash offer. He's like, I'm not a brokey. Like, I don't need to sell this thing.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't scare you away. Um, and that goes back to me like probably being a little too conservative in my underwriting. Um, and so yeah, okay, all right, I'll readdress that.
Just have the conversation. You never know.
And it's true. I just like it's the only storage facility I've gotten on a hook, and I'm like I don't want him to say F off. I'm sick
For
of
all
talking.
you know, this guy bought it for 200K, owns it free and clear, and already cleared like $500,000 in cash flow. And so you're sitting here like,
Yeah,
well, I'm gonna lowball him. And he's like, I'm gonna make my entire original payment back, plus I got all this in cash flow. Cool. Like that's the funny thing about real estate is like the person's owned it long enough. you know, it's like the Patels. They buy a hotel, they move into it, they run it as lean as humanly possible. They don't do a ton of updates. They sell it 20 years later and they move on to another one, and they sell the place not in great shape. Like they don't run them into the ground, but they just don't do a ton of like updates. So they sell them like not in great shape, under market value, low operations. They're leaving money on the table because they don't have the revenue ops stuff set up to maximize. But they like, I don't care. I lived here for free for 20 years. It paid me to live here. And by the way, because it's been 20 years, I paid half of what I'm selling it to you for. So I don't give a shit. It's
I
like,
didn't
oh,
realize, is Patel a national name,
oh, okay. So, well, we won't get
or
too
is that a
crazy.
joke because there's a
It's
local
both.
Patel that owns a bunch of hotels?
Yeah, so it is both. It is a joke only amongst hoteliers. The
God,
Indian culture it's very classist, and
yeah.
Patel is the last name of hoteliers. And so it is to the point that if you on Facebook, there's a group with like 60,000 people in it called Patel Hotel Motel. And it is Patels that are looking for jobs or looking for businesses to buy, or they run. And so like I bet you that's not the only one. I bet you there's probably 50 or 60% of the hotel owners in your market have that name.
Yeah, I know many that do. Yeah,
And they might not be the same. Yeah, there's like I got like 8 offers on our hotel once from different people with the same last name. And I'm like,
that's
it's
so
just
funny.
how they roll.
That's so funny. Awesome. Yeah, no, you're totally right. And you never know what he's gonna say. I've just been like hoping that rates will drop a little bit so I don't sound like I'm
They
so like
they probably will. If I'm a betting man, I'd imagine they drop again at the conference in September.
that's what the internet is saying. But you
Yeah.
know,
I've been joking for probably 2 years now that rates are going to drop for election, amongst other things. But
yeah. Well, we could have predicted that, but
yeah.
yeah. So
Funny thing about that is that, and most people don't realize this, like the Federal Reserve is not a government entity; it's a privately owned company.
yeah.
We don't need to go into Jekyll
I know.
Island. Yeah,
I know. Yeah. Yeah. You can't start stirring the pot too much with that stuff. That sounds a little conspiratorial, even though you and I both know it's true.
yeah, but I mean, it's legitimately not like it's named the Federal Reserve, but it is not the Fed. Like it's private, which is hilarious.
Yeah, they're laughing all the way to the bank.
I know, right? They control. Yeah, it's nuts.
But awesome. Cool, David. Well, I appreciate the time. I appreciate you coached me up. I know, like I said, most people probably know who you are, but give us your pitch on the War Room, the mastermind, and let us know where we can find you and all the good stuff.
Yeah, the best spot to find me, if you go to thebestpodcastguest.com, and I'll say that again because no one ever, thebestpodcastguest.com. You can download a free copy of my book, and you find all my socials, so you can find all the platforms there. The War Room is, it's just a cool spot. It's a community for service members and vets who are serious about achieving financial freedom. It's less about the specific education and more about the community networking and having a space to share your wins without people judging you, and having a space to share your losses or avoid, making losses by asking questions, where everybody in the community actually wants you to win. And it's not like, most struggling entrepreneurs or real estate people, they start talking about stuff and it's like their mom who doesn't own any real estate being like, that's a terrible idea. Tenants are bad. And it's just, this is a military and veteran only community that help people achieve financial freedom. It's a lot of fun to run, and it's cool.
I like it. Awesome, David. Well, I appreciate the time, and we'll stay in touch.
Always, Jason. Let me know if you need anything.
Thanks, man. Keep crushing.